Good evening, and welcome to the final episode of Storytelling Live. I say that with an asterisk, because maybe we will come back. But, our time has come. And I'm glad. You people have been phenomenal. And I thank you very much for watching and enjoying. The drink is here. Sweet beverage. And maybe we went through kind of a few too many. Oh, look, is there a bug on? Maybe we went through a few too many sweet beverages during this period in our lives together. Maybe we had a few too many baked items. But these were the items that brought us joy. And who is to take anyone away from joy? This program, I believe, got me put in Facebook jail for a while, and then I think it got me booted off completely. I have no idea why. I got to show you my vintage tie and jacket collection. Not supposed to let you know that I didn't button the top collar button because it was too tight on my neck. There are a few special parts to tonight's episode. I think I'm going to read a little bit. We'll break for intermission, come back, and then at the very end, I'll play a special, another special thing. So 2 special things for this episode. I wish you were here with me right now so we could read together. You know, a real fireside storytelling. You know, that would be cool. And I have a fireplace upstairs. We wouldn't be down in the office with the globe and the lamp and stuff and the books. Who cares? We'll be up there with the fire and the carpet and the pillows and the candles and the incense. It's upstairs. I have an old phone. What brings that up? Well, I like antiquated things. I like vintage things. I have a vintage phone. And it only speaks to 3G. And I hear that they're going to outmode the 3G. They're going to phase out the 3G. Because, you know, we're all looking at the 5G, right? Bill Gates Kool-Aid, right? I'm not going to talk about what's going on this week. I think talk about what's going on this week is every week that I have done in the past. It's got me in trouble. So when I came to YouTube, I decided I would cool it down. The title of tonight's story is self-explanatory. Okay. And you know who wrote it? You know who's in it? And so I don't really have to do many preliminary notes. Before I dive into this, I want you to know that I look forward to hearing from you and being your friend for many years to come. And let's stay in touch. And you haven't been in touch with me yet, please write me. You know how to find me? So, I don't know. If you're into this, if you're into vintage things, if you're into vintage stories, vintage storytelling, vintage mythology, vintage technology, and the future, I'm about the future too, you know. Because from our past comes our future. Well, comes the present. And onward to the future. Man, it was like 2-3 years ago I wrote this science fiction. It had nothing, well, it had to do with somebody who was actually comparing old days with whatever they have in like the 26th century or whatever like that. Anyway. If you remember, if you've been listening, if you've been following this series, you know that we read the whole thing in some of those super top secret episodes that are no longer available now. Anyway, thank you for hanging with me for about 1.5 years. It's been magical. It's been amazing. It's been something to look forward to. I mean, it's weird that I put on these clothes at night and go talk to my computer for an hour, but I know who I'm talking to. And I'm just recording the message. I'm playing you the message later on a special night. When you guys are decked out in your own special clothes, with your special meal in front of you, and your special drink. So, preface. The friends of Mr. Sherlock Holmes will be glad to learn that he is still alive and well, though somewhat crippled by occasional attacks of rheumatism. He has, for many years, lived in a small farm upon the downs 5 miles from Eastbourne, where his time is divided between philosophy and agriculture. During this period of rest, he has refused the most princely offers to take up various cases, having determined that his retirement was a permanent one. The approach of the German War caused him, World War I, however, to lay his remarkable combination of intellectual and practical activity at the disposal of the government, with historical results which are recounted in his last bow. Several previous experiences, which have lain long in my portfolio, have been added to his last bow, so as to complete the volume. John H. Watson, M.D. His last bow, The War Service of Sherlock Holmes. It was 9 o'clock upon the 2nd of August, the most terrible August in the history of the world. One might have thought already that God's curse hung heavy over a degenerate world, but there was such an awesome hush and a feeling of vague expectancy in the sultry and stagnant air. The sun had long set, but one blood-red gash, like an open wound, lay low in the distant west. Above, the stars were shining brightly, and below, the lights of the shipping glimmered in the bay. The 2 famous Germans stood beside the stone parapet of the garden walk, with the long, low, heavy gabled house behind them. They looked down upon the broad sweep of the beach at the foot of the great chalk cliff, in which von Bork, like some wandering eagle, had perched himself 4 years before. They stood with their heads close together, talking in low, confidential tones. From below, the 2 glowing ends of their cigars might have been the smoldering eyes of some malignant fiend looking down into the darkness. A remarkable man, this von Bork, a man who could hardly be matched among all the devoted agents of the Kaiser. It was his talents which had first recommended him for the English mission, the most important mission of all. But since he had taken it over, those talents had become more and more manifest to the half-dozen people in the world who were really in touch with the truth. One of these was his present companion, Baron von Herling, the chief secretary of the legation, whose huge 100-horsepower Benz car was blocking the country lane as it waited to waft its owner back to London. "So far as I can judge the trend of events, you will probably be back in Berlin within a week," the secretary was saying. "When you get there, my dear von Bock, I think you will be surprised as the welcome you will receive. I happen to know what is thought in the highest quarters of your work in this country." He was a huge man, the secretary, deep, broad, and tall, with a slow, heavy fashion of speech, which had been his main asset in his political career. Von Bork laughed. "They are not very hard to deceive," he remarked. "A more docile, simple folk could not be imagined." "I don't know about that," said the other thoughtfully. "They have strange limits, and one must learn to observe them. It is that surface simplicity of theirs which makes the trap for the stranger. One's first impression is that they are entirely soft, when one comes suddenly upon something very hard, and you know that you have reached the limit and must adapt yourself to the fact. They have, for example, their insular conventions which simply must be observed." "Meaning good form and that sort of thing?" Von Bork laughed. Von Bork sighed as one who had suffered much. "Meaning British prejudice in all its queer manifestations. As an example, I may quote one of my own worst blunders. I can afford to talk of my blunders, for you know my work well enough to be aware of my successes. It was on my first arrival. I was invited to a week-end gathering at the country house of a cabinet minister. The conversation was amazingly indiscreet. Von Bork nodded. "I've been there," he said dryly. I don't know if I can continue these crowd accents. I'm thinking of the typical. I'm sorry to break this. I'm thinking of the Basil Rathbone, World War II, Holmes's, but this is World War I. And this is really Watson who's really talking to us right now. Watson was somehow there. How was Watson there? How did he know? How did he hear about it? Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if this is... Anyway. Exactly. Well, I naturally sent a resume of the information to Berlin. Unfortunately for our good Chancellor is a little heavy-handed on these matters, and he transmitted a remark which showed that he was aware of what had been said. This, of course, took the trail straight up to me. You've no idea the harm that it did me. There was nothing soft about our British hosts on that occasion, I can assure you. It was 2 years living it down. I was 2 years living it down. Now you, with this sporting pose of yours. No, don't call it a pose. A pose is an artificial thing. This is quite natural. I'm a born sportsman. I enjoy it. Well, that makes it the more effective. You yacht against them. You hunt with them. You play polo. You match them in every game. Your four-in-hand takes the prize at Olympia. I have even heard that you go to the length of boxing with the young officers. What's the result? Nobody takes you seriously. You are good old sport. Quite decent fellow for a German. A hard-drinking nightclub knockabout town devil-may-care young fellow. And all the time this quiet country house of yours is the centre of half the mischief in England, and the sporting squire the most astute Secret Service man in Europe. Genius, my dear von Bock, genius. You flatter me, Baron. But certainly I may claim for my 4 years in this country have not been unproductive. I've never shown you my little store. Would you mind stepping in for a moment? The door of the study opened straight onto the terrace. Von Bork pushed it back, leading the way. He clicked the switch of the electric light. He then closed the door behind the bulky form, which followed him, and carefully adjusted the heavy curtain over the latticed window. Only when all these precautions had been taken and tested did he turn his sunburnt aquiline face to his guest. Some of my papers have gone, said he. When my wife and the household left yesterday for Flushing, they took the less important with them. I must, of course, claim the protection of the embassy for the others. Your name has already been filed as one of the personal suite. There will be no difficulties for you or your baggage. Of course, it is just possible that we may not have to go. England may leave France to her fate. We are sure that there is no binding treaty between them. And Belgium? Yes, and Belgium too. Von Bock shook his head. I don't see how that can be. There is a definite treaty there. She could never recover from such a humiliation. She would at least have peace for the moment, but her honor? Tut, my dear sir, we live in the utilitarian age. Honor is a medieval conception. Besides, England is not ready. 'Tis an inconceivable thing, but even our special war tax of 50 million, which one would think made our purpose as clear as if we had advertised it on the front page of the Times, has not roused these people from their slumbers. Here and there one hears a question. It is my business to find an answer. Here and there also there is an irritation. It is my business to soothe it. But I can assure you that so far as the essentials go, the storage of munitions, the preparation for submarine attack, the arrangements for making high explosives, nothing is prepared. How then can England come in, especially when we have stirred her up such a devil's brew of Irish civil war, window-breaking furies, and God knows what to keep her thoughts at home? She must think of her future. That is another matter. I fancy that in the future we have our own very definite plans about England, and that your information will be very vital to us. It is today or tomorrow with John Bull. Mr. John Bull, if he prefers today, that we are perfectly ready. If it is tomorrow, we shall be more ready still. I should think it would be wiser to fight with allies than without them. But that is their own affair. This week is their week of destiny. But you were speaking of your papers. He sat in the armchair with the light shining upon his broad, bald head while he puffed sedately at his cigar. The large, oak-paneled, book-lined room had a curtain hung in the further corner. When this was drawn, it disclosed a large brass-bound safe. Von Bork detached a small key from his watch chain, and after some considerable manipulation of the lock, he swung open the heavy door. "Look," he said, standing clear with the wave of his hand. The light shone vividly into the opened safe, and the secretary of the embassy gazed with absorbed interest at the rows of stuffed pigeonholes with which it was furnished. Each pigeonhole had its label, and his eyes, as he glanced along them, read a long series of such titles as Fords, Harbor Defenses, Aeroplanes, Island, Egypt, Portsmouth Forts, the Channel, Rosyth, and a score of others. Each compartment was bristling with papers and plans. "Colossal!" said the secretary, putting down his cigar. He softly clapped his fat hands. I knew he would do that. I knew that he would do that. This is almost a cold read. I did not know that was coming, but I knew that was coming. Oh, permit me if I don't read this one with a straight face, you know? It's our last one, man. "Colossal," said the secretary, putting down his cigar. He softly clapped his fat hands. "And all in 4 years, Baron. Not such a bad show for the hard-drinking, hard-riding country squire, but the gem of my collection is coming, and there is the setting all ready for it." He pointed over to space, which Naval Signals was printed. But you have a good dossier there already, out of date and waste paper. The Admiralty in some way got the alarm, and every code has been changed. It was a blow, Baron. The worst setback in my whole campaign, but thanks to my checkbook and the good Altamont, all will be well tonight. The Baron looked at his watch and gave a guttural exclamation of disappointment. Well, I really can't wait no longer. You can imagine that things are moving at present in Galton Terrace, and that we all have to be at our posts. I had hoped to be able to bring news of your great coup. Did Altamont name no hour? Von Bork pushed over a telegram. We'll come without fail tonight and bring new sparkling plugs, Altamont. Sparkling plugs, eh? You see, he poses as a motor expert, and I keep a full garage. In our code, everything likely to come up is named after some spare part. If he talks of a radiator, it is a battleship. Of an oil pump, a cruiser. And so on. Sparkling plugs are naval signals. From Portsmouth at midday, said the secretary, examining by superscription. By the way, what do you give him? £500 for this particular job. Of course, he has a salary as well. The greedy rogue. They are useful, these traitors, but I grudge them their blood money. I grudge Altamont nothing. He's a wonderful worker. If I pay him well, at least he delivers the goods, to use his own phrase. Besides, he is not a traitor. I assure you that our most pan-Germanic junker is a sucking drove in his feelings toward England, as compared with a real bitter Irish-American. Oh? An Irish-American? If you heard him talk, you would not doubt it. Sometimes, I assure you, I can hardly understand him. He seems to have declared war on the King's English as well as the English King. Must you really go? He may be here at any moment. No, I'm sorry, but I have already stayed my time. We shall expect you early tomorrow, and when you get that signal book through the little door on the Duke of York steps, you can put a triumphant finis to your record in England. What? Tokay? He indicated a heavily sealed, dust-covered bottle, which stood with 2 high glasses upon a salver. May I offer you a glass before your journey? No thanks, but it looks like revelry. Altamont has nice taste in wines, and he took a fancy to my Tokay. He's a very touchy fellow, and yet humoring in small things. I have to study him, I assure you. They had strolled out onto the terrace again, and along it to the further end, where at a touch from the Baron's chauffeur, the great car shivered and chuckled. "Those are the lights of Harwich, I suppose," said the secretary, pulling on his dust coat. "How still and peaceful it all seems. There may be other lights within the week, and the English coast a less tranquil place. The heavens, too, may not be quite so peaceful, if all that the good Zeppelin promises us comes true. By the way, who is that?" Only one window showed a light behind them. In it there stood a lamp, and beside it, seated at a table, was a dear old ruddy-faced woman in a country cap. She was bending over her knitting, stopping occasionally to stroke a large black cat upon a stool beside her. "That is Martha, the only servant I have left," the secretary chuckled. "She might almost personify Britannia," said he, with her complete self-absorption and general air of comfortable somnolence. "Well, au revoir, Von Bork." With a final wave of his hand, he sprang into the car, and a moment later 2 golden cones from the headlights shot through the darkness. The secretary lay back on the cushions of the luxurious limousine, with its thoughts so full of the impending European tragedy that he hardly observed that as his car swung round the village street, it nearly passed over a little Ford coming in the opposite direction. Von Bork walked slowly back to the study when the last gleams of the motor lamps had faded into the distance. As he passed, he observed that his old housekeeper had put out her lamp and retired. It was a new experience to him, the silence and darkness of his widespread house. For his family and household had been a large one. It was a relief to him, however, to think that they were all in safety, but for that one old woman who had lingered in the kitchen. He had the whole place to himself. There was a good deal of tidying up to do inside the study, and he set himself to do it until his keen, handsome face was flushed with the heat of the burning papers. A leather valise stood beside his table, and into this he began to pack very neatly and systematically the precious contents of his safe. He had hardly got started with the work, however, when his quick ears caught the sounds of a distant car. Instantly, he gave an exclamation of satisfaction, strapped up the valise, shut the safe, locked it, and hurried out onto the terrace. It was just in time to see the lights of a small car come to a halt at the gate. A passenger sprang out of it and advanced swiftly toward him, while the chauffeur, a heavily built elderly man with a greyed moustache, settled down like one who resigns himself to a long vigil. "Well?" asked Von Bork eagerly, running forward to meet his visitor. For answer the man waved a small brown paper parcel triumphantly above his head. "You could give me the Glen Had tonight, mister," he cried. "I'm bringing home the bacon at last." "The signals?" "Same as I said in my cable. Every last one of them semaphore, lamp code, Marconi. A copy, mind you, not the original. That was too dangerous. But it's the real goods, and you can lay to that." He slapped the German upon the shoulder with a rough familiarity from which the other winced. "Come in," he said. "I'm all alone in the house. I was only waiting for this. Of course, a copy is better than the original. If an original were missing, they would change the whole thing. You think it's all safe but the copy?" The Irish-American had entered the study and stretched his long limbs from the armchair. He was a tall, gaunt man of 60, with clear-cut features and a small goatee beard which gave him the general resemblance of the caricatures of Uncle Sam. A half-smoked sodden cigar hung from the corner of his mouth, and as he sat down he struck a match and relit it. "Making ready for a move," he remarked as he looked around him. "Say, mister," he added, as his eyes fell upon the safe from which the curtain was now removed, "you don't tell me you keep your papers in that." "Why not?" "Gosh, in a wide-open contraption like that? And they reckon you be the home spy. They reckon you to be the home spy. Why, a Yankee crook would be into that with a can opener. If I'd known that any letter of mine was going to lie loose in a thing like that, I'd have been a mug to write you. I'd have been a mug to write you at all." "It would puzzle any crook to force that safe," Von Bork answered. "You won't cut that metal with any tool." "But the lock?" "No, it's a double combination lock. You know what that is?" "Search me," said the American. Oh, that's his... Well, anyway, I'm getting the accents. I thought he was a Brit, coming up. I thought he was a Brit, so I gave him a British accent at first. Now we know he's search me. Search me is a total American accent expression. All right. Well, you need a word as well as a set of figures before you can get the lock to work. He rose and showed a double radiating disc round the keyhole. "This outer one is for the letters, the inner one's for the figures." Well, that's fine." "So it's not quite as simple as you thought. It was 4 years ago that I had it made, and what do you think I chose for the word in figures?" "It's beyond me." "Well, I chose August for the word, in 1914 for the figures, and here we are." The American's face showed his surprise and admiration. "My, but that was smart. You had it down to a fine thing." "Yes, a few of us then could have guessed. Yes, a few of us even then could have guessed the date. Here it is, and I'm starting down tomorrow morning." "I guess you'll have to fix me up also. I'm not staying in a skull-darned country all on my lonesome. In a week or less from what I see, John Bull will be on his hind legs and in fair rampant. I'd rather watch him from over the water.
But you're an American citizen.
Well, so is Jack James, an American citizen, but he's doing time in Portland all the same. It cuts no ice with the British copper to tell him you're an American citizen. It's British law and order over here, says he. By the way, Mr. Talking of Jack James, seems to me you don't do too much to cover your man.
Oh, what do you mean?
Von Bork asked sharply. Well, you're their employer, aren't you? Ain't you? It's up to you to see that they don't fall down, but they do fall down. When do you ever pick 'em up? There's James.
It was James's own fault. You know that yourself. He was too self-willed for the job.
James was a bonehead, I give you that. Then there was Hollis.
That man was mad.
Well, he went a bit woozy toward the end. It's enough to make a man bug house when he has to play part from the morning to night with 100 guys already set the coppers wise to him. But now there's Steiner. Von Bork started violently and his ruddy face turned a shale pale.
What about Steiner?
Well, they've got him, that's all. They raided his store last night. He and his papers are all in Portsmouth jail. You'll go off, and he, poor devil, will have to stand the racket. Lucky if he gets off with his life. And that's why I want to get over the water as soon as you do. Von Bork was a strong, self-contained man. But it was easy to see that the news had shaken him.
How could they have got onto Steiner? He muttered. That's the worst blow yet.
Well, you nearly had a worse one, for I believe they're not far off me.
You don't mean that?
Sure thing. My landlady down Fratton Way had some inquiries. And when I heard of it, I guessed it was time for me to hustle. But what do I want to know, mister? What I want to know, mister, is how the coppers know these things. Steiner's the 5th man you've lost since I signed on with you, and I know the name of the 6th. If I don't get a move on, how do you explain it? And ain't you ashamed to see your men go down like this? Von Bork flushed crimson.
How dare you speak in such a way?
If I didn't dare things, mister, I wouldn't be in your service. But I tell you straight what's in my mind. I've heard that with you, German politicians, when an agent has done his work, you are not sorry to see him put away. Von Bork sprang to his feet.
Do you dare to suggest that I have given away my own agents?
I don't stand for that, mister. But there's a stool pigeon on a cross somewhere, and it's up to you to find out where it is. Anyhow, I'm taking no more chances. It's me for Little Holland, and the sooner the better. Von Bork had mastered his anger.
We have been allies too long to quarrel now at the very hour of victory, he said. You've done splendid work and taken risks, and I cannot forget it. By all means, go to Holland, and you can get a boat from Rotterdam to New York. No other line will be safe a week from now. I'll take that book and pack it with the rest.
The American held the small parcel in his hand, but made no motion to give it up. What about the dough? He asked.
The what?
The boodle. The reward. 500 smackaroons. The gunner turned damn nasty at the last. Oh. The gunner turned damn nasty at last, and I had to square him with an extra $100, or it would have been Nitsky for you and me. Nothing doing, says he, and he meant it too, but the last 100 did it. It's cost me £200 from first to last, so it isn't likely I'd give it up without getting my wad. Von Bork smiled with some bitterness.
You don't seem to have a very high opinion of my honor, said he. You want the money before you give up the book.
Well, mister, it's a business proposition.
All right, have your way.
He sat down at a table and scribbled a check which he tore from the book, but he refrained from handing it to his companion.
After all, since we are to be on such terms, Mr. Altamont, said he, I don't see why I should trust you any more than you trust me. Do you understand?
He added, looking back over his shoulder at the American.
There's the check upon the table. I claims the right to examine that parcel before you pick the money up. The American passed it over without a word. Von Bork undid a winding of string and 2 wrappers of paper. Then he sat gazing for a moment in silent amazement at a small blue book which lay before him. Across the cover was printed in golden letters, "Practical Handbook of Bee Culture." Only for one instant did the master spy glare at this strangely irrelevant inscription. The next, he was gripped at the back of his neck by a grasp of iron, and a chloroformed sponge was held in front of his writhing face. "Another glass, Watson," said Mr. Sherlock Holmes as he extended the bottle of Imperial Tokai. The thick-set chauffeur, who had seated himself by the table, pushed forward his glass with some eagerness. "It's a good wine, Holmes." "A remarkable wine, Watson. Our friend upon the sofa has assured me that it is from Franz Josef's special cellar at the Schonenburn Palace. Might I trouble you to open the window, for chloroform vapor does not help the palate." The safe was ajar, and Holmes, standing in front of it, was removing dossier after dossier, swiftly examining each and then packing it neatly in von Bork's valise. The German lay upon the sofa, sleeping stertorously, with a strap round his upper arms and another round his legs. We need not hurry ourselves, Watson. We are safe from interruption. Would you mind touching the bell? There's no one in the house except for old Martha, who's played her part to admiration. I got her the situation here when I first took the matter up. Ah, Martha, you'll be glad to hear that all is well." The pleasant old lady appeared in the doorway. She curtsied with a smile to Mr. Holmes, but glanced with some apprehension at the figure upon the sofa. "It's all right, Martha. He hasn't been hurt at all." "I'm glad of that, Mr. Holmes. According to his lights, he has been a kind master. He wanted me to go with his wife to Germany yesterday, but that would hardly have suited your plans, would it, sir?" "No, indeed, Martha. So long as you were here, I was easy in my mind. We waited some time for your signal tonight." It was the secretary, sir." "I know. His car passed ours." "I thought he would never go. I knew that it would not suit your plans, sir, to find him here." "No, indeed. Well, it only meant that we waited half an hour or so till I saw your lamp go out, and knew that the coast was clear. You can report to me tomorrow in London, Martha, at Clouds' Hotel." "Very good, sir." "I suppose you have everything ready to leave?" "Yes, sir. He posted 7 letters today. I have the addresses as usual." "Very good, Martha. I will look into them tomorrow. Good night. And these papers," he continued as the old lady vanished, "are not of very great importance, for of course the information which they represent has been sent off long ago to the German government. These are the originals which could not safely be got out of the country." "They are of no use?" I should not go so far as to say that, Watson. They will at least show our people what is known and what is not. I may say that a good many of these papers have come through me, and I need not add, are thoroughly untrustworthy. It would brighten my declining years to see a German cruiser navigating the Solent according to the minefield plans which I have furnished. But you, Watson," he stopped his work and looked to his friend, and he took his old friend by the shoulders. "I've hardly seen you in the light yet. How have the years used you? You look the same blithe boy as ever." "I feel 20 years younger, Holmes. I have seldom felt so happy as when I got your wire asking me to meet you at Harwich with the car. But you, Holmes, you have changed very little, save for that horrible goatee." And you know what? I forgot that we're going to take a little break. It's a little late for a little break, but nonetheless, here's a treat. I'm reading a poem. Do you want to see it?
Well, if you don't want to see it, you can go get yourself a drinky poo or whatever you want. Take your intermission, bathroom break, something like that. But I'm going to read a poem, and it's very special, and I hope you'll like it.
Brightly, flashing, brightly, suddenly, you met me, suddenly, nowhere, but there, my soul slipped in the tender grass of the rolling ocean, where bright gills turn, where secret water glitters. Past the boat we carved of mongoose sinew and partridge dreams, in lullaby tones, free from illness, free, and over sand so hot my feet will sting for days, careful days. Bow your head, smile to the shadow, beyond the long face, extended countenance, infinitely patient one. We pass as we depart into evening's arms.
And we're back, right? I thought it was cool. I actually filmed it in the vertical, and then like, I've got iMovie. You have iMovie? You guys have Macs? Anyone? Maybe. Anyway, if you don't know iMovie, or if you're learning it, so I had this, like I said, a tall rather than like wide cinematic. So I closed in on it, and I'm only filming on an ancient SE, right? What? Oh, I have messages. So cool. Great. So there's this effect in there. It's called like the, what is it? Ken Burns. I was going to say George Burns, right? No, it's the Ken Burns. The Ken Burns is an interesting effect because, you know, you can pan across stills and sort of bring them to life. However, if you're doing a long tall, you can, in video, create the focus go down or up like that. So I used that to my advantage in so that I could keep the keep the camera focused on what I figured was visually important for that scene. Oh. Too many words, man. Too many words. Anyway, we're getting back into this. So anyway, here's why. Well, so, I mean, these guys haven't seen each other for years. And they're just getting back together. And if you remember, we were dropped in the middle of the story, and what's his head? The German agent thinks he's talking to a confidant, an American Irishman, and it's actually Holmes with a crazy good-looking goatee, talking like an American. It's golly gee, shucks, golly wilkers type thing, right? For World War One. And so, actually, the chauffeur of the Irishman is Watson. And it would brighten my Holmes. It would brighten my declining years to see a German cruiser navigating the Solent according to the minefield plans which I have furnished. But you, Watson... He stopped his work and took his old friend by the shoulders. I've hardly seen you in the light yet. How have the years used you? You look the same blithe boy as ever. I feel 20 years younger, Holmes, I have seldom felt so happy as when I got your wire asking me to meet you at the Harwich car. But you, Holmes, you have changed very little. Save for that horrible goatee. These are the sacrifices one makes for one's country, Watson, said Holmes, pulling at his little tuft. Tomorrow it will be but a dreadful memory. With my hair cut and a few superficial changes, I shall no doubt reappear at Claridge's tomorrow as I was before this American stunt. I beg your pardon, Watson, my well of English seems to be permanently defiled before this American job came my way. But you have retired, Holmes. We heard of you as living the life of a hermit among your bees and your books in a small farm upon the South Downs. Exactly, Watson. Here's the fruit of my leisurely ease, the magnum opus of my latter years. He picked up the volume from the table and read out loud the whole title, Practical Handbook of Bee Culture with some observations upon the segregation of the queen. Alone I did it. Behold the fruit of pensive nights and boyish days when I watched the little working gangs, as once I watched the criminal world of London. But how did you get to work again? I've often marvelled at it myself. The foreign minister alone could have withstood. When the premier also deigned to visit my humble roof. The fact is, Watson, that this gentleman upon the sofa was a bit too good for our people. He was in a class by himself. Things were going wrong, and no one could understand why they were going wrong. Agents were suspected or caught. There was evidence of some strong and secret central force. It was absolutely necessary to expose it. Strong pressure was brought upon me to look into the matter. It had cost me 2 years, Watson, but they have not been devoid of excitement. When I say that I started my pilgrimage at Chicago, graduated in an Irish secret society at Buffalo, gave serious trouble to the constabulary in Skibbereen, and so eventually caught the eye of a subordinate agent of Von Bork, who recommended me as a likely man, you will realize that the matter was complex. Since then, I've been honored by his confidence, which has not prevented most of his plans going subtly wrong, and 5 of his best agents being in prison. I watched them, Watson, and I picked them as they ripened. Well, sir, I hope that you are none the worse. The last remark was addressed to Von Bork himself, who, after much gasping and blinking, had lain quietly listening to Holmes's statement. Hello, Moth. Goodbye, Moth. Goodbye. The last remark was addressed to Von Bork himself, who, after much gasping and blinking, had lain quietly listening to Holmes's statement. He broke out now into a furious stream of German invective, his face convulsed with passion. Holmes continued his swift investigation of documents while his prisoner cursed and swore. Though unmusical,
German is most expressive of all languages, he observed when von Bork had stopped from pure exhaustion. Hello, hello, he had added as he looked hard at the corner of a tracing before putting it in the box. This should put another bird in the cage. I had no idea the paymaster was such a rascal, though I have long had an eye upon him. Mr. von Bork, you have a great deal to answer for. The prisoner had raised himself with some difficulty upon the sofa, and was staring with a strange mixture of amazement and hatred at his captor. I shall get level with you, Altamont, he said, speaking with slow deliberation. If it takes me all my life, I shall get level with you. The old sweet song, said Holmes. How often have I heard it in my days gone by? It was a favourite ditty of the late lamented Professor Moriarty. It's called Colonel Sebastian Moran. It had also been known to warble it, and yet I live and keep bees in the South Downs, upon the South Downs. Curse you, you double traitor! Cried the German, straining against his bonds and glaring murder from his furious eyes. No, 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 it's not so bad as that, said Holmes, smiling. As my speech surely shows you, Mr. Altamont of Chicago had no existence in fact. I used him, and he is gone. Then who are you? It's really immaterial who I am. But since the matter seems to interest you, Miss von Bork, I may say that this is not my first acquaintance with members of your family. I have done a good deal of business in Germany in the past, and my name is probably familiar to you. I would wish to know it, said the Prussian, grimly. It was I who brought about the separation between Irene Adler and the King of Bohemia, when your cousin Heinrich was the imperial envoy. It was I also who was saved from murder by the nihilist Kloppmann, Count von und zu Grafenstein, who was your mother's elder brother. It was I. Von Bork sat up in amazement. There's only one man, he cried. Exactly, said Holmes. Von Bork groaned and sank back on the sofa. And most of that information came through you? He cried. What is it worth? What have I done? It is my ruin forever. Hello, friend. Jesus. It is certainly a little untrustworthy, said Holmes. It will require some checking, and you have little time to check it. Your admiral may find that new guns, your admiral may find the new guns rather larger than he expects, and the cruisers perhaps a trifle faster. Von Bork clutched at his own throat in despair. There are a good many other points of detail which will no doubt come to light in good time, but you have one quality which is very rare in a German. In a German, Mr. Von Bork, you are a sportsman. And you will bear me no ill will when you realize that you, who have outwitted so many other people, have at last been outwitted yourself. After all, you have done your best for your country, and I have done my best for mine, and what could be more natural besides? He added, not unkindly, as he laid his hand upon the shoulder of the prostrate man. It is better than to fall before. It is better than to fall before some ignoble foe. These papers are now ready, Watson. If you will help me with our prisoner, I think that we may get started for London at once. It was no easy task to move Von Bork, for he was a strong and desperate man. Finally, holding either arm, the two friends walked him very slowly down the garden walk which he had trod with such proud confidence when he received the congratulations of the famous diplomatist only a few hours before. After a short final struggle, he was hoisted, still bound, hand and foot, into the spare seat of the little car. His precious valise was wedged in beside him. I trust that you are as comfortable as circumstances permit, said Holmes, when the final arrangements were made. should I be guilty of liberty if I lit a cigar and placed it between your lips? But all amenities were wasted upon the angry German. I suppose you realize, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, said he, that if your government bears you out in this treatment, it becomes an act of war. What about your government and all this treatment? Said Holmes, tapping the valise. You are a private individual. You have no warrant for my arrest. The whole proceeding is absolutely illegal and outrageous. Absolutely, said Holmes. Kidnapping a German subject and stealing his private papers. Well, you realize your position and your accomplice here. If I were to shout for help as we pass through the village... My dear sir, if you did anything so foolish, you'd probably enlarge the 2 limited titles of our village inn by giving us the dangling Prussian as a signpost. The Englishman is a patient creature, but at present his temper is a little inflamed, and it would be so well as not to try him too far. No, Mr. Von Bork, you will go with us. You will go with us in a quiet, sensible fashion to Scotland Yard, whence you can send for your best friend, Baron von Herding, and see if even now you may not fill that place which he has reserved for you in the ambassadorial suite. As to you, Watson, you're joining us with your old service, I understand, so London won't be out of your way. Stand with me here upon the terrace, for it may be the last quiet walk that we shall ever have. The 2 friends chatted in intimate converse for a few minutes, recalling once again the days of the past, while the prisoner vainly wriggled to undo the bonds that held him. As they turned to the car, Holmes pointed back to the moonlit sea and shook a thoughtful head. There's an east wind coming, Watson. I think not, Holmes. It's very warm. Good old Watson. You're the one fixed point in a changing age. There's an east wind coming all the same. Such a wind as never blew on England yet. It will be cold and bitter, Watson, and a good many of us wither before its blast. But it's God's own wind nonetheless, and a cleaner, better, stronger land will lie in the sunshine when the storm's cleared. Start her up, Watson, for it's time that we were on our way. I have a cheque for £500, which should be cashed early, for the drawer is quite capable of stopping it, if he can. And with that, we end an era. We end a series. We end a rationale. I command you all to go frolic in the warm summer air. And I will be cooling my heels. Perhaps in a random thunderstorm in the sidewalks of Mexico City, or cooling my heels in the turquoise waters of the Oaxacan coast. And after that, I will be back. We'll do Poetry Festival, and we'll do other fun things coming up. And they don't include the internet. Well, they do, but they won't. You know, the internet ends up in it anyway, but, you know, if you've lost any friends, I hope you can recover them. If you can't recover them, then I wish you many new friends in this new age. And that's another reason I picked tonight's stories, because it shows it's Holmes remarking upon a shift in history, which is Doyle remarking upon a shift in history. And that's exactly what we're witnessing right now, is a shift in history. I'm going to show you my last thing, and then I'll come back and say goodbye, okay? There it is. So, I've been getting dressed, putting on these clothes. This is kind of a more recent thrift store find that I like. And this is one of my very first ties that I got. Yeah, it's kind of a velvet.
Velvety.
Yeah, it was like a velvet thing. I got this at the local thrift store. They're called the Achievement House, and they're great. They help people out and give them work and stuff like that, you know. Anyway, so yeah, this is one of my first ties that I bought like way back in the way back days, and it's an actual silk from probably from the. Is it Rococo? You think? Really? Well, you know, Paisley. What's Paisley? In the 80s, Paisley was cool, you know. So the 80s meant something. I mean, Paisley meant something in the 80s. Because the 60s were cool in the 80s. And the 50s were cool in the 70s. Anyway, this is an actual, real tight clip that I got. I wanted to share this with you, too. This is, it's where all my little goodies come from. This goes... These are my special things. Wow, bro. Check it out. So he was just about, watch. What's that say?
Yes, I will marry
you. This is Dennis Ray Falcon Powell Jr. We've been doing music for a long time. He's playing with my dad's ring. It's one of the last things, one of the most amazing things that he left me. And he left it with my mother. So, it says AAF. Abdurrahim. No,
AFA.
AFA. Abdurrahim Fdili Alawi. Or Alawi Fdili Abdurrahim. That's what it says. Alawi Fdili Abdurrahim. So you're going to wear that for a night thing?
It might weigh down my hands.
Yeah,
it's very heavy.
So, also I have this thing, tiny little thing that says YA on it, and this was something my grandma gave me when I was, oh my God, I must have been 5 or something. I don't know why she gave me that ring. But that's my bow ties in there, if you ever see me with the bow tie on. I never wear that because I really don't want to be a cowboy. But that's where I keep all my good stuff. So, welcome. I think you've already been welcomed or whatever. This is the end. This is the last. This is the last show. Storytelling Live. And we're going to do, I guess, or maybe he will, or I will, or we will, do some songs. Take the tie off. It's weird. I've been getting dressed and reading stories at night once a week for about 1.5 years. And we're all ready to get out back into the world.
Hot boy summer.
Hot boy summer. So if there's ever like another illness or whatever, we'll meet back here. Tell stories. So, I'm gonna back him on the melodica. We've been playing music for, oh my God, is it 10 years? Off and on. 8, 9?
8, 9, 10? 8,
Yeah,
9, 10?
since 2013.
13?
Ready?
I am.
I saw a pretty face, and then I looked closer, and it was a scary kind of face. And then I shifted the whole damn place. And it became a pointless kind of face. And then the pointless face became an angel flying. So I wrote down with haste this dream because the day was dying. Slowly doors were closing, and I was all empty-handed. And at every open door, I was sternly reprimanded. What's the point of all this psychic cartography? What's the point of charter in the latitude of me? What's the point of charter in the longitude of me? Am I the sea? Or am I just some ship lost at sea? Or am I something floating around in the sea? God, I wish that I could clearly see. But then I hone in on you. And it feels just like finding no truth. And there's just one thing left to do. There's just one thing left to do. Find that dove that flies right to your shine. Is it true the dove's course is really truly mine? I don't care no more, I just want to land on you. I don't care no more, I just want to land on you. I don't care if this course is true or isn't true. I don't care no more, I just want to land on you. I don't care if this course is true or isn't true. And we can wake up in the morning and we can kiss just like eagles. And we don't care what people say, they say we're just two noisy little seagulls. But I know something opposite is true. And I know there's an eagle in me. And I know there's an eagle in you. And there's just one thing left to do. There's just one thing left to do. Find the dove that flies right to your shine. Is it true that dove's course is really truly mine? I don't care no more, I just want to land on you. I don't care if this course is true or isn't true. I don't care no more, I just want to land on you. I don't care if this course is true or isn't true, I just want to land on you. I just want to land on you. I just want to land on you. I just want to land on you.
So I've been wearing this thing a while. And I need you to wear it now. Don't take it off. It's for you now.
Out of the darkness.
That's right. Yeah, it's got a URL, and look it up.
It glows.
It does glow. Glows in the dark.
Thank you.
What is that?
Wiggly. Wiggly 4.
Ew. I don't like
High five.
that.
Wiggly 4.
Whoa, we could do this because COVID's over now, isn't it? Yeah, feel it. Was I doing this on the next one? Or?
Let's cut it. I think that's good.
That's it? You don't want to do another one? All right. You heard it. Cool, huh? So, I'm not wearing that thing. He has it. It's his job to wear it, man. You know. Take care of yourselves. And take care of your friends who need it. If they need it. If you can. Hold space for those who need your help. And work on your home and your roots. Anyway. There's still a lot more to be said. There are a million other stories out there. Jeff, I know you want the Grimm's fairy tales. Maybe we'll come back and do some of those. Mike, I think you wanted more African millionaire or stuff that's, in the public domain is safe. There's a lot of it. There's no proper way I can say goodbye. But I will improperly say goodbye, good night. Take good care of yourself and your loved ones, and hold space for those who need it if you can afford it. Good night.